Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on Radio Maria Ireland. This is Aidan here in the studio, and I'm just here to announce the fact that usually we have Father Luuk Jansen on a Thursday, but because this Thursday is our Mariathon along with Friday, Father Luuk has very kindly agreed to move his show this week from Thursday until Tuesday. So please do interact with Father Luuk. He'd love to hear from you every week. So again, if you'd like to send in any comments, any questions, any feedback, any clarifications, anything at all, Father Luuk is here at your service and very willing and able to answer your questions. So please do interact with Father Luuk. You can text him on 089 467 2000. That's 089 467 2000. You can email info@radiomaria.ie. That's info@radiomaria.ie. Or if you prefer, you can give us a call 014 123 456. That's 014 123 456. Now I'll pass you across to Father Luuk Jansen.
Thanks, Aidan. Thank you very much, and very welcome to the Light of Truth. Today, indeed, on a different day, but I'm sure there are still people listening to it. We'll just continue where we left off last week. So, I'm reading at the moment the Gospel according to John, and pretty much we have run through the first chapter, looking at the prologue according to John, which is really talking about the coming of the Word, the beginning was the Word created everything, and that through everything came to the Word, everything came into being. Then moving on to the witness of John the Baptist and who John the Baptist was, his ministry of preaching in the desert to call people to repentance with the baptism of John's baptism, which was a baptism of repentance, of renouncing our sins and start to live a good life. And John the Baptist was very popular at the time. Lots of people came to him, even from Jerusalem, and the authority sends word to him to inquire of who he was, or maybe even who he thinks he was doing what he was doing. John, however, points out Jesus to some of the first apostles, and this is where, I suppose, with the baptism of Jesus, even if it is not mentioned as such in the Gospel of John directly, John the Baptist says that he saw the dove descending up on him when he was baptized, and that this was to be the sign of who the Messiah was, who Jesus was. And as such, he points it out to a few of his disciples, John the evangelist, presumably one of them, also Andrew, the brother of Peter. They follow him, they stay with him, and they are touched by who he is. It changes their lives, and they give their lives from then on to Jesus and to his ministry. With him, Peter then comes as well. The next day they find Andrew finds his brother Peter, and he joins the group as well as Nathaniel and Philip. So this is really the start of the proclamation of the kingdom, as Jesus gathers his first disciples, who he's going to name apostles later on, to pronounce the message of the gospel. So this was, as John recounts it, the first and the second day. And just before the show, I was kind of looking at that and thinking of what the significance is, but we just keep that in mind. So he doesn't mention the first day, and actually, it's interesting that he says the next day he saw Jesus coming. So there's actually more. There's only also 0 day apparently. I'm not 100% sure. Should have done my homework a bit better. But so John the Baptist is proclaiming in the desert, is where we start. And then the next day he saw Jesus coming towards him and said, "Look, there's the Lamb of God." The disciples, Andrew and John, they are presumably be there, because then the next day, as John stood there again with two of his disciples, Jesus went past, and John looked towards him and said, "Look, there's the Lamb of God." And the two disciples heard what he said and followed Jesus. Now then we again have the next day, after Jesus had decided to leave for Galilee, he met Philip and said, "Follow me." And Philip finds Nathanael, and Nathanael follows and goes as well, after having this remarkable conversion being touched by Jesus in a way that we don't really know. Like I said before, this is one of my, for some reason, one of my favorite passages in the Gospel, because it's so mysterious that from being a skeptic, suddenly he turns around and recognizing that Jesus is God, just by a simple word or a simple encounter. And that is sometimes the effect an openness of heart has when we actually encounter the truth itself. So then it says, in the beginning of chapter 2, on the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. So what these days exactly mean, we don't know, I suppose. Well, I don't know anyway, because even if there would be days subsequent to each other, then you could, presumably, depending on where the wedding in Cana exactly is in relation to where John was baptizing, walk it in a day. But I think it is usually seen that if it was near Jericho, that trip would be at least a 2-day or maybe a 3-day journey. But it could be wrong on that. So these days are maybe not necessarily indicative of following up days, but they signify something, and that's something to ponder and think about. And maybe some of the listeners have an idea of a suggestion. What is John telling us by these events following up one after the other? What does it mirror? Because often it mirrors something, or it gives us some kind of an indication. The same as I said last week, that when the disciples went to Jesus, it was the 10th hour. They really enjoyed. They stayed with him, presumably because it was late. 10th hour being 4 o'clock, 2 hours before it got dark, and I mean, not the best to kind of walk in dark roads in that time. In that time of the ages, I suppose, in that time of history, maybe not the best idea to walk around in the dark. So they stayed with him, but also the significance of 10 being a perfect number. So it was the perfect time they spent with Jesus. So there's often little hints and links in how things are portrayed. And so here possibly the same as well, that from the next day and the next day, we arrive in the third day. And even if I could do two things at the same time, I would actually look up Genesis and see what happened on the third day, or something like that. Anyway, we continue with the wedding at Cana. On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana in Galilee. The mother of Jesus was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited. So here we already see that Jesus and his disciples had been invited. So, I mean, it's probably already there's a band of people, followers with him, even that he hasn't really started doing anything yet, presumably. And they ran out of wine. So this is at the wedding feast. They ran out of wine, since the wine provided for the feast had all been used. And the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said, "Woman, what do you want from me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." So this is a very interesting passage. Mary realizes that the people there are in need, that they run out of wine, and weddings at the time in Galilee, they were long events. I mean, they could go on for a week, I think. And it would be a long party, and maybe it was not a good thing as people came together, traveling, obviously not being as easy, to stay together for a few weeks and to a few days, I mean, and then to spend time together. And often, as it says later on in the Gospel, naturally the best wine was used first, but then when things got thinner, I mean the poor wine would be served. But here already they ran out of wine very quickly. And they ran out of wine, since the wine provided for the feast had all been used. Okay, it doesn't really say when, but the sense is that it happened quite early. And maybe this is indicative of something as well, but sometimes we can be the best prepared and want to do something, but sometimes we just run out of juice, I suppose. Things don't really work out the way we expected. Not necessarily saying that it means bad preparation, but things don't always go the way we want. And sometimes things go actually better than we want. I mean, if we have a wedding feast and we planned for so many guests and more turn up, and it is a great gathering together, it is very successful, naturally we're going to run out of supplies a little bit earlier as well. So you can look at it different ways. Here they ran out of wine, and Mary realizes it. And so in our lives too, sometimes when we run out of wine, if we run out of energy or things to do, God is there. Mary especially is always looking after us, to intercede for us and to bring our needs to the Lord, so that He, as we will read now, can provide us with what we need as well. So it's good to kind of see how such an event can be applicable to our lives. So I better read the rest as well before I jump ahead too quickly. So Jesus says, "My hour had not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." There were 6 stone water jars standing there, meant for the ablutions, and are customary among the Jews. Each could hold 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them to the brim. Then he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the president of the feast." They did this. The president tasted the water, and it had turned into wine. Having no idea where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the president of the feast called the bridegroom and said, "Everyone serves good wine first, and the worst wine when the guests are well wined. But you have kept the best wine till now." So maybe for those who are not that familiar with the story, it puts it a little bit more in context. So Jesus transforms the water into wine. And that is, I suppose, what I was trying to talk about, is the fact that God can transform the water in our lives, which well, could be, I wouldn't say dry, because water isn't dry, but tasteless or ordinary, into something special if we allow him to do it. And that it is his mother, as it is in this case, that is instrumental in bringing it to the attention of Jesus. Even, of course, that God doesn't need it to be brought to his attention, but as we know, I mean, God wants to interact with us, interact with anybody, and so we need to ask for things, and we need to bring our needs before him all the time. So this is exactly what Mary is doing here. She brings the situation to his attention. Now it is very interesting what Jesus says. "Woman, what do you want from me? My hour has not yet come." I think very literally it would say, "Woman, what's between you and me?" Or what has it to do with you and me? Could possibly be another way of saying it. So what is Jesus saying here? Is he arguing with his mother, or is there something deeper going on here? Is there something more fundamental? And I think it's not really a normal way to say woman. Gune, I think it uses in the Greek, which means woman as such. It's not like mother or anything like that. No, it's the term woman, as in woman. So the significance of this supposedly is that he addresses her as Eve, the mother of all. And I think it is the same and I will check that during the break, I think it is the same as in used at the cross. Woman, behold your son. And to John, behold your mother, I think. But I will have to check that up. That it is a special it's a special term or quite a significant term here at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. So I'm just going to look it up for a moment, and as such we might as well play our first song, and it will be You Say from Lauren Diegel.
And welcome back here to Radio Maria Ireland. That was Lauren Diegel with You Say. And usually we have Father Luuk Jansen on a Thursday between 4 and 5, but just this week we have a special event happening this Thursday and Friday, which is our Mariathon, all day Thursday and Friday. So this is Father Luke's show, The Light of Truth. Again, if you want to get in touch with Father Luke, he'd love to hear from you. You can contact him via texting 089 467 2000. That's 089 467 2000. You can email info@radiomaria.ie or give us a call 014-123-456. Couple of messages in Father Luke. Hi Father Luke, I'm enjoying the show this evening. I liked how you said that just as Jesus turned water into wine, he can transform our lives. Another one. Hi Father Luke, why do you think Jesus called Mary woman rather than mother? And another one, the last one. Hi Father Luke, will you be going to Newbridge this weekend for the U2000 retreat? So now I'll pass you over to Father Luke Jansen.
Okay, thank you very much, and welcome back to the Light of Truth. The simple question first. Yes, I will be in Newbridge this weekend. It's nice to go back since I lived there for so long. Apart from being at the U2000 retreat, the Christmas retreat, which is happening this weekend, it's always nice to visit Newbridge as well for me. But so yes, the Christmas U2000 retreat is on this Friday to Sunday. So anybody in the younger age category, I think it's 16 to 35, although under 18s have to make sure they register beforehand, are very welcome, of course, and it's always a great event. Usually about just over 500 people gather there for the weekend to spend time together in prayer, in chatting, listening, learning, having fun, and all kinds of things. So it's always a great event, and something I'm always looking forward to. So yes, I will be there, and of course I invite anybody listening to come along as well. So the other one was, why does Jesus call his mother woman? This has to do with the fact that Jesus uses themes, I suppose, and that's what I kind of already was alluding to, but I think that it is really to designate her as Eve, the mother of all the living, and to a certain extent that is also what is to be expected. That is always mirroring what happens at the cross when Jesus gives his mother to us. So here he already designated at the beginning of his ministry, he designated his mother to be our mother also, as in being Eve, the mother of all the living, what Eve means, and then gives her to us at the cross, which is the end, naturally, of his public ministry in this world. In John chapter 19, verse 27, or well, I can read it from 25. Near the cross of Jesus stood his mother and his mother's sister, Mary the wife of Clopas, and Mary of Magdala. Seeing his mother and the disciple whom he loved standing near her, Jesus said to his mother, "Woman, this is your son." Then to the disciple he said, "This is your mother." And from that hour the disciple took her into his home. So this is really what I was looking for. The mirror on the other side is that Jesus also calls Mary here woman. So again, mirroring this universality of Eve as she is now the mother of all the living, not the living who live on this world, not in the temporal world, the mother of all the living, but the mother of all the living to a certain extent in the eternal world, giving to us for eternity, and as such also interceding for us. So now if we look at the wedding feast at Cana, we can see already straight away that this role, this reaction of Jesus, is already to what she is doing. She already started her role of interceding for people, of bringing them to her son, of being the mother of them all. As mothers obviously always take care, or should take care at least, I should say, should take care of us. She already takes care of the people there. And as such, she assumes her role, maybe even unknown to herself. That would be something that could be something that could be up for discussion. How much knowledge did Mary have about everything happened? I mean, there's a whole discussion about how much did Jesus know in his life on earth, being God obviously, but also being fully human. For Mary, you can have probably similar discussions. I'm not going to veer into that at this moment, but she already takes on her role that was given to her, which she accepted at the Annunciation, which he gave her fiat to do whatever the Lord wanted. She steps up her role now, and Jesus subsequently says, "What do you want from me? What do you want me to do? My hour has not come yet." He seems a bit reluctant to give in to her request. Now, if we look at the more literal translation, the same word is actually used here in John, and that was what I was checking that. I sometimes do try to do two things at the same time, but it's probably quite noticeable. I was just checking that it is actually the same word that is used at the cross as it is in here in John chapter 2. It is, if you look at the more literal translation, it means, what is it between you and me? And as we know from the Gospel according to Luke, Simeon says to Jesus' mother, to Mary, a sword will pierce your heart too. And so maybe what Jesus is saying here is, why do you really want to do this? Do you want it to start? I suppose they have been living together for about approximately 30 years, grown up together in Nazareth, have shared their life together that time. But once Jesus steps on this road, things will be different. Things will never be the same again. And I suppose that is it's important. It's going to be important into mental change into their lives. So to a certain extent, Jesus might be asking her, "Do you want this to start?" So it doesn't necessarily need to have a negative undertone. What do you want from me? Maybe it has to do more with, okay, are you sure you're ready to start on this road? Because this road is not going to be too long, about 3 years, until they stand and he addresses her the same way, "Woman," at the end, just before he passes away and dies. And of course, the resurrection, but Mary stays behind after the ascension, so a sword pierces her soul quite significantly, I would say. I was giving a talk on the Immaculate Conception recently, and there's something to reflect upon, how Mary, how difficult it must have been, having been that close to Jesus for 33 years, and that he now has ascended into heaven, after the resurrection and after the ascension into heaven, that of course he has faith, of course he knows it will be okay, of course he knows what had happened. But would it be easy? Well, maybe it would be, or maybe it is not. Maybe she was longing to be united again until she was assumed into heaven at the end of her journey in this world. I would say it could have been a difficult time not maybe in difficult as in that he was struggling or to a certain extent, but the longing of being back again with her son in the fullness of glory, I suppose. I could see could be quite significant. But anyway, that's a completely different story. So that is what I think is kind of at the core of that is how I would read it. That it is Jesus asking, yes, my hour has not come yet, or maybe it is, our hour has not come yet. So his mother Mary then replies and said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. So she doesn't have a doubt that Jesus is going to respond to her request. She has absolutely no doubt that he is going to work the miracle. And maybe that is for us in a certain sense gives us confidence as well, that yes, we know that she is going to be she is going to give us Jesus is going to give us what his mother asked him. I do love the image of Louis Marie de Montfort, and I think he puts it like this, more or less, that yes, of course, Jesus will accept anything from us. But if you look at the king, I suppose, in a worldly circumstance, at the time I'm a little bit more apt maybe than now, but the king was somebody you would not normally approach. And let's say a poor farmer comes and wants to give the king an apple. Well, to the king this might be very insignificant, possibly having feasts and banquets and everything going on all the time. What is this apple? What is the significance of this apple? This man disturbing him to a certain extent. Not saying that that's the case, but you can kind of imagine there's a huge gap there. I'm not saying that there is a gap between Jesus and ourselves like that, but you can kind of see that. And just as a metaphor, which doesn't always work as we know, but to illustrate the difference when Mary intercedes for us, it is like taking this apple, polishing it up, putting it on a silver dish, and bringing it to her son. Now suddenly it will be a completely different present. His mother bringing it to him presented on a silver platter. The apple has a completely new significance. And while we can argue about if our prayers are different and our relationship between Jesus and not, I think it's a good metaphor for what it is intended to illustrate, that yes, Our Lady's intercession is very powerful. And as we can see here, it is powerful enough to have Jesus do what maybe, I don't want to say he didn't want to do yet, but he was at least hesitant to a certain extent about. Mary doesn't ask, oh, would you do it? Or no, he just tells the servants, do whatever he asks you. There wasn't a question. It wasn't a command to Jesus to do it. She knew. She knew that he would do what she would ask him. So then there were 6 stone water jars standing there, meant for the ablutions that are customary among the Jews. Each could hold 20 or 30 gallons. Now we're talking about a huge amount of what is going to be water in them. So Jesus said to the servants, fill the jars with water, and they filled them to the brim. Now at this stage the servants must be kind of wondering, because there was 6 stone water jars of 20 or 30 gallons. I don't know. I mean, I'm not too good in the imperial system, but is that 120 liters of water? It's a fair amount. It would take a little bit of effort to pour that amount of water, to pull it out of a well. So I suppose the servants are servants and they do what they're told. But you kind of wonder what they were thinking. But anyway, they do what they were asked to do. And the jars were filled with water. And they fill them to the brim. So they do exactly what they're told. Not like they filled them halfway. But no, they filled them to the brim. And then Jesus said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the president of the feast." Now, there doesn't seem to be much of a fuss about it. They just put the water in, and Jesus tells them to take some and bring it to the president. And the president, they did this. The president tasted the water, and it had turned into wine. It doesn't actually say that it turned into wine in the vessels either. When the servants took it out, maybe it was still water or appeared to be like water. There's all kinds of things you can think about here. Like, what would I have thought when they brought it? Having no idea where it came from, this is the president, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the president of the feast called the bridegroom and said, well, first of all, the president of the feast called the bridegroom. And again, when I'm just kind of putting myself in this situation, and I think sometimes it's a good way to do it. If we are observer here, or even if we imagine us to be one of the servants, you would kind of be a little bit afraid, wouldn't you? I mean, you're still a servant. You go with what was water. You put the water into these stone jars. You took the water out. You brought it to the president, put it into his cup. I don't know if they could see it or not, that it had changed. He drinks and he calls for the bridegroom. Well, presumably them being servants of the bridegroom, they might be a little bit scared, because what if this president is going to say, what are your servants doing here, bringing me water instead of wine? They would be in serious trouble. So you can look at the story from all kinds of different ways. But when the bridegroom calls, and the president said, "Everyone serves good wine first, and the worst wine when the guests are well wined. But you have kept the best wine till now." So the water has indeed turned to wine. Jesus had made of something that is very ordinary into something very special. And I suppose that is the significance of this whole story. Well, apart from the fact that it gives us a little bit of an insight in various things, that it is Jesus who turns the water into wine. That he takes what is ordinary, transforms it, even with the people being instrumental in doing this, the practical work, don't know about it. He can turn anything into wine. He can turn anything into wine, and indeed he can turn wine into his blood as well. But he can turn water into wine that easy, with no fuss. But it makes a huge difference. And it's only the servants who knew, although I'm sure that the story went out fairly quickly after. So we might have our second song now, which will be "For Your Glory" of Matt Meyer.
And welcome back here to Radio Maria Ireland. This is Father Luuk Jansen, Show the Light of Truth. And normally it's at Thursdays at 4, but this week now, just for a one-off time, it's on Tuesdays at 4. So please do get in touch. Great to see the messages coming in. Please do send in your own thoughts and reflections. Father Luke loves to hear from you. The text number is 089 467 2000, or you can email info@radiomaria.ie. A couple of messages, Father. Hi, Father. Love listening into you each week to your show. God bless you. Question in. Hi, Father Luke. Interesting show today. I like the comment you made about Jesus accepting any gift we give him. It goes to show how humble he is, even though he is king of the world. Great show. Love listening in each week. Next one in. Hi, I'm just wondering if the priest uses water and wine in the Bible because of this Bible story. Thanks, enjoying your show. And lastly, hi, Father Luke. I like the point you made about looking at the story from the servant's point of view. I never thought of it that way before. Goes to show that we have to trust God even when things don't make sense at the time. So now I hand you over to Father Luuk Jansen.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the comments and the feedback on the program. So it's always great to get it, and it gives me also something to talk about. I was just looking up there the water and wine. Just because I say this prayer, obviously saying celebrating Mass every day, and then when it comes to you, when somebody asks, I couldn't remember it. To the meaning of this body and blood, there's two of them that are kind of similar. So, but it is the one with the prayer that is used by the priest or the deacon if he serves at the altar. When the little bit of water is poured into the wine, the prayer said is, by the mystery of this water and wine, may we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. That is what it has to do with. It is the water and the wine are significant of Christ's divinity and his humanity. So the wine is his divinity and the water is added as being the humanity. So it is an essential symbolical part of the Mass, and as such it is required to be done during the Mass by the priest or by the deacon if he prepares the chalice. So that is part of that question. That is really the reason. So they represent the divinity and the humanity of Jesus. Is this the reason that we do this? Is that coming from the wedding feast of Cana? I'm not sure. I would need to look into the history and what the church fathers would have said exactly if they actually make those links. I'm not sure. I'm thinking at the moment if there's any significant passage I can think of where water and wine is connected in that way, and I don't think so. So it is very much possible that it is here showing that Christ can make from what is, let's say, ordinary in this world, can make something divine. If we can see wine as being something divine, but at least we can, I suppose, agree that it's nicer than water is, a good bit nicer. So yes, there might well be a link. If there is actually historically a link, I don't know. I would need to look into the history a bit. Maybe the catechism or something like that might actually have that answer, because there's usually some writings of the Church Father or the early or even the Apostolic Fathers that might already have drawn on this link. But I'm not 100% sure. I just, when I was looking for it, I saw St. Thomas Aquinas is writing about it as well, but I haven't been able to read it quick enough, so I won't quote it because it might be a bit too lengthy. So, but it's a very interesting question, and I think it's always good to kind of think about these things and kind of see, how do things connect, and how does this all work out? So, good. So, I think it is. There was just the comment there to. It's interesting to look from the servant's point of view. I think it's always good to put yourself into the story in some kind of a way. To a certain extent, it helps, I think, to visualize. It's the same as we pray the Rosary. And I suppose if we pray the Rosary, we can reflect on this one as well, since John Paul II added the mysteries of light. If we put ourselves into the situation, and we can put ourselves as different people into the situation and pray and contemplate and kind of see what appears to us. I know for some people this is a very powerful way of prayer, if they can really, if they put themselves in that and it really kind of opens up to them. Can be quite interactive to pray in this way. For other people, it's a little bit harder, but I think it is good sometimes to look at the situation from different points of view and to kind of see how that works for us. So we can look at from Our Lady's point of view, but also from the servant's point of view. And indeed, as said, it really shows us that we should trust that even if we think that we don't have anything that is as worthy or useful or whatever for to give to God, that God can do something with anything, with the simplest thing. Like I said, the apple can be the most divine gift given to him, the one thing he really wanted at the time, to the intercession of Our Lady. But generally, that even if we don't have water, we can go to the steward, give it in faith, and trust that it has become wine. Well, that is kind of the faith we have to work towards, I suppose. That is the faith that heals, that transforms the world, that let miracles happen. Not easy to get to that, but that is the faith we are called to, I suppose. To really have the faith and trust in Jesus, to trust in what he says, to really have the faith of a mustard seed to allow us to move mountains, and the faith that to know that water will turn into wine if we allow God to work the miracles. So I do think it's an important observation. So yes, so thank you very much for those comments. I'm just going to finish the last line and then to see if there's anything I'd like to tie up on this gospel in the last few minutes before a last song. We have probably another 7 minutes to go. This was the first of Jesus' signs. It was at Cana in Galilee. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples, but they stayed there only a few days. So, this is the first sign that Jesus is working. And for those who like to do their homework, it will be interesting to look into what this sign means. Maybe for next week, if I make a little note to look up signs in John's Gospel, because it is definitely something that is associated. Signs are always associated with prophets and people to come. I mean, when the authorities asked Jesus to give a sign to support what he's doing, so there's a lot of things that are associated with signs and things like that. So yes, I do think it could be interesting to kind of have a look at signs, and I might do that for next week, putting a little bit maybe in there, because I will be on retreat, so I'm not sure if I can actually do a radio show. But anyway, that's a different matter. The science is the first sign of Jesus. This is the first sign that he works, and it is really the start of his public ministry, at least in the Gospel of St. John. And actually, we see the baptism, which was before, and maybe on the third day was, I'm just thinking of the days now, on the third day was the third day after the third day after he left, because I said it is about 2-3 days journey into Galilee. I can't remember exactly where Cana is, but I think it's kind of, if I remember right correctly, it's on the west shore of the Sea of Galilee, so you have to kind of go around the Sea of Galilee a bit. So actually maybe that is where he went after the baptism. He went over to Cana, and that was a 3 days journey, or at least he arrived there 3 days afterwards. So Jesus goes to Cana and now works his first sign. So really supporting, okay, this is where the mission is really starting. Naturally, we know that in the some of the other Gospels, he goes straight away in the wilderness to pray and fast as well. So again, we don't know exactly what these periods, these days kind of means. Maybe St. John is telling us something else here. I do not know. We do know that St. John's Gospel is a little bit more ordered around the 3 years and the different times going up to the temple. But yes, we don't really know, I suppose, at the end of the day. So it was at Cana in Galilee that he performed his first sign. He revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So those who already had this encounter, it was confirmed by the signs that Jesus works. And sometimes I think that is actually the way it sometimes works. I mean, signs are there maybe to build up the church, and signs and miracles and healings are there, of course, to confirm that Jesus is alive, is true. But to a certain extent, faith is needed before signs can be performed. So it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg, but I suppose there is people with faith needed in order for miracles to happen. And I often say that maybe that is the reason that we don't see as many miracles anymore, because we don't really believe in them anymore, or at least we don't believe they are happening anymore. So our faith is weakened to a certain extent, not allowing it maybe to happen. That there has to be a certain amount of faith for miracles to happen. So faith, the disciples already encountered Jesus, and now the signs confirm what they already encountered and strengthens their belief in him. It confirms that he is who he says he is, or at least he is who John the Baptist says he is, and who they perceived he was as well. For example, when Andrew goes to Peter and says, "We have found the Messiah." When Philip goes to Nathanael and says the same. They perceived who he is. Now this is confirmed by the signs. And as I said, signs were always given to confirm that a prophet, for example, was coming from God, to confirm the authority and authenticity of the gospel. Hence, people asking him for signs all the time to show that he is who he claims to be. So after this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and his disciples. But they stayed there only a few days. Now we know that Capernaum is going to be seems to be kind of the home base of where he is going to operate from. I suppose a little bit more convenient than Nazareth, which is much further to the north. Capernaum, if I'm right, on the mid-east coast of the Sea of Galilee, a very thriving business place. And as we know that Peter and John and Andrew and James, or I should say Andrew and Peter and James and John, were already there and had fishing business with their, well, at least James and John, with their father. So it was a thriving community, and Jesus goes there. And maybe it's just on invitation of Peter, who says, so, "Come on, we go and stay at my house." And he goes there, but he only stays a few days. Now, whatever this means, we do not know. So I think that is where we leave it off for today, to reflect on the wedding feast at Cana, and to kind of think about, okay, what is the significance in our own lives? And hopefully next time I will have a little bit more on signs. So we might just finish the last little bit of this hour off with the final song, which will be "He Knows My Name" from Francesca Battistelli. Thank you very much, and hopefully till next week.